Sorry I'm late.
It's the Queen! Run!
She's not a queen anymore. She's nothing more than an evil witch.
No. Don't stoop to her level. There's no need. You're wasting your time. You've already lost. And I will not let you ruin this wedding.
Oh, I haven't come here to ruin anything. On the contrary, dear. I've come to give you a gift.
We want nothing from you.
But you shall have it.
So there we have what we were talking about earlier, you know, Lana Parrilla playing the evil queen, and she's not going to stand for this happy ending.
No.
And can you talk a little bit about the casting in all three of those main characters in that scene?
I mean, we were just incredibly lucky in that everybody who we wanted and who we sent the script to responded. And
yeah, I mean, we were huge fans of Big Love, and when we were sitting down to write Snow White, Ginnifer Goodwin was immediately who came to mind. And of course, after it, everyone's like, she just did 6 years, she's not going to do it. And we said, just send it. And she read the script and loved it, and Lana just came in and scared us and frightened us, and we brought her to the network, and they were frightened by her. And you know, Josh Dallas is just, we can't wait for, you know, people to see him. He's fantastic. You know, if you saw Thor, you got a little bit of him, but he is, you know, everybody on the cast has just been a dream. Jennifer Morrison, you know, we were watching How I Met Your Mother, and we just assumed she was the mother on it. And when we realized that she wasn't, we immediately called her manager and was like, will you send her the script? And, you know, Robert Carlyle, as we said, we wrote the part for, and Jared, I mean, you know, he's the heart of the show.
We have another fan question coming up right here. This one comes from Hans, who asks, in Once Upon a Time, will there only be existing fairy tales, or have you written any new ones?
Oh.
That's a good question.
Well, in a way, it's both. We're using existing fairy tales to write our versions of them.
I mean, it's funny. Jen Morrison says something about her character, which was sort of subconscious on our part, which is like she's a new fairy tale character. So in a way, that's what we've done with Emma Swan in an unconscious way, really, but by being the daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming and being put on this mythic journey, she is in a way our attempt at our own fairy tale.
And you know, do any of these characters perhaps have any sort of abilities that might have transferred over to their Storybrooke reality, or are they pretty much human?
Well, I would say keep watching.
Yeah, I mean, those are exactly the kinds of things that we hope the audience asks and that we're going to hopefully have some fun with.
Okay, we've got the next fan question here. This one comes from Brianna, who writes, do either of you have a favorite character to write so far on the show?
Oh, it's hard to say who our favorite is, because I think each character kind of represents a part of us. You know, it's really tough to say, because you know what's great for us is you'll be writing a Snow White evil queen scene, you're like, oh, this is fantastic, but then you'll write Emma with a scene and you're like, oh, well, this is great. So it's really hard to say who our favorite is.
Yeah, I'd say it's not so much the characters, because as Eddie says, they're all sort of different parts of ourselves. It's the opportunity to explore so many different worlds and so many different situations by virtue of who all these characters really are. That's the most fun.
Emma's obviously being told some pretty crazy things when, you know, just in the real world sense. How accepting or not accepting is she of this?
I think she behaves like we would behave, which is this is absolutely ridiculous, and this kid is crazy and he's out of his mind. And you know, I think that what she's being told is ridiculous. So, you know, that's how she comes into the show. In a weird way, she's kind of, you know, she's which she should be, skeptical.
Got the next audience question coming up. And this one comes from Courtney and asks, was it difficult to transfer the magic of fairy tales into the real world?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because I feel like the real world kind of plays like the real world on our show, but yet there is that hint of magic and there is that hint of something in the fact that when you go to the shrink, he is Jiminy Cricket because he's the conscience. So everything has kind of a spin on it that we hope makes it sound magical, but it's always hard to, you know, when you're trying to do a show like this.
You know, and the thing with magic, whether it's in you know, the real world or the fairy tale land on the show, is the approach we've taken is to try to treat it as real as possible, and that to the characters it's all real to them, except for Emma, who is a skeptic, but is dealing with it on a real level. So that, I mean, that's the way we're trying to really ground the show.
Our next fan question ready, and this one comes from, I hope I'm going to say your name right here, Onder, who asks, are there handsome boys and beautiful girls in this series like Sawyer, Jack, Claire, and Son in Lost?
I would say absolutely. You know, I would say that the guys, Jamie Dornan, who plays the sheriff, and Josh Dallas and Robert Carlyle, and the women, you know, Jennifer Morrison, Jennifer Goodwin, Megan Ori, who plays Little Red Riding Hood, Lana. I think there are, you know, there are a lot of pretty people in this show.
Everyone will be okay on the eye candy level?
I hope so. I hope so.
With the you know, characters and their history and the stories we all know, is there any sort of, you know, references like, you know, do you dare have Jiminy Cricket talk about wishing upon a star, or?
We have, you know, he always carries an umbrella. In the pilot opens, Emma, you know, has a birthday and she wishes on a blue star candle, which is a shout out, of course, to Pinocchio. So there are little touches here and out, but I don't think the characters in Storybrooke are conscious of it. You know, it's almost like they're doing it without realizing why.
And that's the fun thing for us, which is making these characters behaving in the ways that they've always behaved, whether they know it or not, and not always sure why they're doing the things they're doing.
Got the next fan question ready? And this one comes from Ellie, and she writes, will there be a lot of special effects and fairy tale magic, or is it based more on the drama between the relationships?
I mean, both. It's, you know, there's certainly special effects and hopefully exciting spectacle, but it's all, we're really trying to ground it in human drama.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, we're really, you know, as we said before, it's character first, but the way we tell these character stories is, you know, hopefully big in scope, and it is cinematic, and, you know, we are making, when we go to the fairy tale side, things you've never seen before on television.
Is that fun for you to have, you know, you're running almost 2 shows in one, because you do have the 2 realities, and to know in the fairy tale world you don't have to limit yourself that much.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, you know, that was what made Lost so great, was that one week you could write, you know, Saeed and he's a soldier, and the next week Hurley could find a van, and then you could do a Jack doctor story, and the show allowed us to do everything. So for us, you know, we got very used to being able to have a show where you could do everything, and I think that's what Once does as well.
Okay, we've got the next fan question ready. And this one comes from Peggy, writes, will this show make me think and wait in anticipation for every episode like Lost did?
Well, I hope so.
Well, Peggy, that's actually more of a question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're going to have to watch
Peggy,
the show.
yeah, let us know on Monday what you think.
Just post on the Facebook page and let us know. And
please.
We hope so.
I guess, you know, tying into that, you know, how much of a sort of like long-term story are you telling versus the, you know, week-to-week stories? Are there going to be a lot of sort of cliffhangers and dangling things?
Right now we've been given 13 episodes by ABC to work with, and our goal is to make them kind of as awesome as we possibly can.
I think that there is, you know, there is a larger mythology at play, but the show itself is oddly more self-contained. It is really more about the characters, and each episode is really more self-contained, so it isn't, you know, every week is about the same thing.
But should the show continue, there is a larger story that we would love to have the opportunity to tell. Yeah.
Okay, we got the next fan question ready. And this one comes from Emily, and she writes, will Emma ever start believing Henry?
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I mean, do we get, with all the flashbacks to the characters in Fairy Tale Land, are we going to also maybe see a piece of what Emma's life was like before Storybrooke?
We would love to be able to do something like that. We would love to be able to go back and see, but I would have to just say keep watching.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Emma is skeptical in the pilot, but, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, she's how we imagine the audience, and we'd love her journey to kind of mirror theirs.
And,
with the show.
you know, when you're the role of the savior, you would wonder, you know, if destiny led you to this day or not, and if so, it probably followed you throughout your life without you even realizing it.
Right, got the next fan question ready here, and this one comes from Chris, who writes, how do you avoid covering the same ground as the last several years of the Fables comic?
Well, you know, to be totally honest with you, Chris, we've only read the first 2 Fables comics, and it was many years ago, and we know that, you know, Fables is, you know, what we read, it's awesome, and we know that it went on for many, many, many issues, and people love it, but I guess the truth is we don't know what they've done in the last several years, so we're just kind of, you know, doing our version of fairy tales.
Yeah, I mean, to us, fairy tales are a genre, and when we attacked this genre, it wasn't based on any particular preconceived notions of the genre other than how we as individuals perceived it. So we're trying to tell stories that are uniquely us, and by virtue of that, I don't think they'll be like anything else, for better or worse.
If, you know, if we could generate 1/10 of the excitement that Fables has with its fans, we would be happy.
I know you touched upon this last week in New York Comic Con, but you get to be the first out of the gate in what's sort of going to be a bit of a fairy tale storm coming with some movies and TV shows. What do you think that is that's sort of in the zeitgeist at the moment?
I think that, you know, Snow White came out in 1937, which was during the Depression, and I feel like, you know, these fairy tales at the end of the day, and it's, you know, what's our show's about, it's about hope. And it's the ability that your life can change. You know, it's why you kind of go and buy a lottery ticket, so that if it wins, you can go and tell your boss to, you know, go to hell, and I'm going to move to Paris, and that's my life. And that's what fairy tales are, which is, you know, one day you're sweeping up for your stepsisters, and the next you're going to the ball. And I think that right now, in my opinion, in these uncertain times, people, you know, need a little hope, and they want to be taken away to a place where they feel a little better. And I think, you know, if Lost was about redemption, Once is about hope.
Okay, we've got the next fan question ready. This one comes from Brianna, who writes, what has been your favorite thing to write so far for this show?
Oh, you know, that changes every day. Every day we write something new that you're like, this is my favorite thing.
And that's the goal when writing television, for us at least, which is each episode to get it to the place where it's our favorite thing at that point.
I know you've got the core characters that we're going to be introduced to in the pilot, but you did mention Cinderella. Are there other characters we should be looking for on the horizon?
Maleficent, who's being played by Kristen Burr from True Blood. Bauer, sorry. Magic Mirror, who's Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad. We are going to see Hansel and Gretel. We're going to see Cinderella.
Yeah, there's a number of character stories and mythologies we're dipping into that we're, you know,
because the show at its core is a mashup, so you may have a situation where 3 different people from 3 different stories are in one together.
All right, we're going to take, I think, our last fan question here, and this one comes from Jesse, and he asks, a direct one here, will Alice in Wonderland ever be involved? Or she, he or she?
We hope so. That is one of my personal favorites, you know, Alice in Wonderland, so I would be heartbroken if we couldn't get to that someday.
There's a lot of worlds we want to explore, and, you know, hopefully if people watch and like the show, we'll have the opportunity to explore them.
I guess that would be the, you don't want to pace yourself and not have every character all at once.
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of, you know, slowly unfolding them.
Okay, guys, we're wrapped up here with our time, but please make sure to tune in to Once Upon a Time. That's Sunday, the 23rd at 8 p.m. on ABC. Thanks, guys, for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching.
We hope you like the show.